What exactly is the rock cycle? Thanks for joining me today as we talk about the answer to that question. If you enjoy my videos, please make sure to like and subscribe. Recycling has grown in popularity over the last number of years, and now recycling centers are nearly everywhere. When you go to the grocery store, perhaps to get a soft drink, or perhaps you're getting bottled water, you'll often find a little label on the can or on the bottle talking about how if you return that can or bottle to the store, you can get a couple cents, for recycling. But what exactly are they doing? Well, they're taking the plastic or the metal out of that object and they're using it, purifying it, and then reusing it, right? So they might make a new bottle or can out of the same plastic. Now, a very similar thing happens in nature when we're talking about rocks. In nature, there are basically three main types of rocks. First would be the sedimentary rocks, and these are rocks that are formed out of sediment, as is in their name, sedimentary. Basically, what that means is that you can have mud or sand or silt or dirt or clay over time form a layer, and when that layer hardens, it is called a sedimentary rock layer. There's also another type of rock that's called a metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock is formed when a rock layer comes into contact with heat or perhaps pressure, and that allows the minerals in the rock to recrystallize or perhaps just become aligned with one another, such that metamorphic rocks often have large crystal grains in them, and they often have these very interesting layers in which the crystals have been aligned. The third type of rock is called an igneous rock, and igneous rocks form from volcanic activity, or basically whenever magma or lava cool. The distinction there is that magma is basically the same material except when it has not yet been exposed to the surface, and lava is when that magma comes up out and then is exposed to the surface, then it's called lava. But either way, when that material cools and hardens, it forms what we call igneous rock. So how exactly are these rocks recycled? How do we get from a chunk of rock to a new rock of a completely different type? Well, there's lots of different ways that can happen. One is simply through erosion and redeposition. This is a large block of St. Peter's sandstone from Kentland Quarry in Indiana. And this block of sandstone is made up of lots of little sand grains that have been cemented together to form this rock. Now, over time, various factors can wear away at this rock, and that is called the process of erosion. A lot of erosion is done by water, and that is because water obviously comes and flows over rocks in a variety of forms, and one of those would be rain, right? So rain over a rock formation for a very long period of time can, over time, slowly break down the rock layers. And part of that is actually that rain can be slightly acidic. It has an acid in it called acetic acid. So when we have a cliff out of limestone, for example, limestone is very reactive to acetic acid. And so when rain has even a very small concentration of acetic acid, it over time basically chemically tears apart the limestone and erodes away the cliff. Erosion by water can also happen very quickly. For example, when you have a natural dam that stores water and then that dam breaks, water can be released very rapidly and can carve out a canyon in rocks. Now, another way in which water erodes is through the freeze-thaw cycle. And this is the same thing which afflicts the roads around the country. By us, in the winter, right, you have the water all getting on the road. It gets frozen into the cracks of the road and turns into ice on the road. And the problem there is that when water turns into ice, it expands. And so if it gets into a crack in the road, it expands and basically cracks the road, which I've seen many times before. Now that same thing happens naturally. water seeps into cracks in the rocks and then freezes, expands, and basically peels off layers of the rock. So how exactly do we get from all that eroded rubble to a new rock layer? Well, possibly that rubble can turn into a new sedimentary rock layer. So if that rubble is transported by water, it can get laid down into a layer and harden over time as new sediments pile up on top of it, and it can become another sedimentary rock layer. Now, water isn't exactly necessary because we can also have other deposits deposited by wind, for example, that can also form rock layers as well out of sediment. So that's how we can get new sedimentary rocks from sediment. But how exactly do we get metamorphic rocks? Well, metamorphic rocks are derived from either sedimentary or igneous rocks that are exposed to heat or pressure. And usually then this has to happen very deep down in the earth where there's a lot of weight because of all the rocks on top of that particular layer. And we've got the heat coming from the magma right within the earth. Basically, it becomes less solid and the crystals in the rock, the minerals, can actually basically regrow themselves. And depending on how quickly or slowly this happens, we can get very large crystals within metamorphic rock, or they can become very small. And then, of course, there is igneous rock. And igneous rock, as I said before, forms when that magma or lava happens to cool, and it cools into something. Once again, depending on how long or how quickly it cools, it can form different types of igneous rock. And one fairly typical igneous rock, for example, is called basalt. The important thing to grasp here is that we can get any one type of rock from any other type of rock. So a sedimentary rock can be pushed down into the earth by tectonic activity, melted, and then redeposited on the surface as a lava flow. Or a metamorphic rock can be worn away into sediment and deposited as a sedimentary rock. So we can go between any one of those three types of rocks and get any one of those three types of rocks. If you enjoy my videos, please make sure to like and subscribe.